The stars were silent. Cold light stretched across the black sea of space, but for the refugees drifting there, it felt like a cage. Their ships were once part of a proud empire, strong and shining, carrying banners of conquest. Now those same ships were cracked, broken, and fading. Hulls were patched with scraps, engines burned uneven, and the people inside had only shadows left in their hearts. They had been cast out. The empire that once called them citizens now named them traitors. Whole families, crews, and fleets were pushed into the dark with no home, no world, and no allies. Planets turned them away. Star stations closed their gates. Everywhere they went, voices shouted that they were unwanted. On one of the larger ships, a young alien named Rin sat near a narrow window. His skin was pale gray, his eyes faintly glowing with tired light. He stared at the endless stars, but he could not feel wonder anymore. Hunger gnawed at him, and the cold of the metal walls pressed into his bones. He whispered, almost to himself, "Maybe we were meant to fade here." The words carried in the silence, and an older voice answered. "No, Rin. Not while I breathe." It was Commander Talon, a tall figure with broad shoulders, his uniform torn but still worn with pride. He stepped into the chamber, his steps heavy but steady. His people looked at him as if he was the last pillar holding them together. Rin turned his head, his voice quiet. "Every system has turned us away. No one wants us. The Empire hunts us, and the free worlds close their gates. How long can we run before we fall apart?" Talon placed a hand on the cracked wall beside him. His eyes were sharp, filled with fire that had not gone out. "We were betrayed, cast into the void, but we are still alive. As long as we draw breath, there is hope. Somewhere, there must be a world willing to take us in." Around them, the sound of coughing echoed from the lower decks. Supplies were running thin. Children were weak, elders were sick, and the ships had little power left to keep heat and light steady. The once proud fleet had become a drifting group of shadows. In the command chamber, the Council of Exiles argued. Some demanded they turn back and beg the Empire for mercy. Others wanted to split the fleet and search different regions of the galaxy. But Talon stood firm. "No mercy will be found in the Empire. We cannot crawl back to the ones who cast us out. We must find new ground, even if it lies beyond the reach of known stars." A silence fell after his words, and in that silence, a spark of belief returned to a few faces. Still, doubts lingered. Rin asked, "And if no one accepts us? If no one listens?" Talon's gaze shifted to the map on the console. "There is one place left. A world the Empire fears. A world that stands alone but strong. The humans of Earth." The chamber stirred with murmurs. The very word Earth brought unease. The Empire had painted humans as dangerous, fierce, and unpredictable. To the exiles, they were a mystery. Tales said that Earth had resisted conquest, fought off fleets larger than its own, and built strength in silence. No one dared to approach them lightly. One council member, her face marked with worry, spoke sharply. "You would lead us to the humans. They are warlike. They are proud. Why would they help us when even our own kind turned us away?" Talon did not blink. "Because they know what it means to stand alone. They too were once outcasts in this galaxy, yet they survived. If anyone might understand us, it is them." The council fell into argument again, but Rin listened quietly. He thought of all the cold refusals, all the gates that had closed, all the ships that had turned their weapons on them instead of offering food. Perhaps the commander was right. Perhaps only a people who had faced the same kind of exile could understand. In the lower decks, whispers spread. The commander will lead us to Earth. Some whispered it with hope, others with fear. Mothers held their children close, wondering if the humans would show kindness or if this would be the last mistake of a dying fleet. Night, or what they called night in the endless dark, settled over the ships. In his chamber, Talon stood alone, staring at the stars. He remembered battles fought under the Empire's banner, victories that once filled him with pride. Now those same stars felt like judges, watching as his people drifted closer to ruin. But in his heart, a fire still burned. He spoke softly to the empty room. We will not be forgotten. We will not fade. If the stars cast us out, then we will find a new home beneath them. The fleet groaned as engines shifted. Their direction changed. Slowly, carefully, the broken ships turned their bows toward the blue planet far beyond the edge of known trade routes. Toward Earth. Ren watched from his window as the stars shifted. For the first time in many weeks, his chest felt lighter. He did not know if the humans would accept them. He did not know if they would survive the journey. But at least they were moving forward, chasing hope instead of waiting to die. The stars remained silent, but the exiles had chosen their path. And that choice carried them toward a world that might finally call them home. Far away from the drifting refugee fleet, Earth rotated in calm silence. Blue oceans shimmered, white clouds swirled, and green lands stretched across the globe. To anyone looking from space, the planet seemed peaceful. But inside the world, watchfulness never slept. In orbit, satellites scanned the darkness beyond the moon. Massive defense stations stood ready, built after centuries of threats from hostile empires. Earth had learned the hard way that peace was not given, it had to be guarded. Inside the Global Defense Council chamber, 12 leaders sat around a long circular table. Maps of space flickered on the screens above them. At the center, a signal pulsed faintly, showing the approach of unknown ships moving slowly toward the solar system. They are not a fleet of war, one scientist said, adjusting her glasses. Their engines are weak. Their signals are broken. If they are scouts, they are the worst I have ever seen. A general with gray hair leaned forward. Do not let your guard down. Weak ships can still carry strong weapons. Until we know their intent, we must treat them as a threat. Others nodded, murmuring with concern. Humanity remembered too many times when fleets had come under banners of peace, only to strike with sudden fire. But one voice spoke against the fear. Commander Myra sat at the table, her uniform plain but her eyes sharp with thought. She was younger than most around her, but she carried herself with calm strength. Look at the data, she said. These ships are falling apart. Life signs are faint. Their systems are unstable. I do not see soldiers preparing for war. I see people trying not to die. The council grew quiet for a moment. Then another member spoke, cautious. If you are right, Commander Myra, then why come here? The galaxy knows we stand alone. We do not trade, we do not ally. Why would they seek Earth if not to test our defenses? Myra folded her hands. Maybe because every other door was closed to them. We should at least listen before we decide. The council did not like rushing into trust. Votes were taken, and at last a decision was made. A small human fleet would move to intercept the unknown ships at the edge of the solar system. They would not attack unless provoked, but they would stand ready for anything. As the meeting ended, Myra walked alone through the quiet hallways of the station. She paused by a wide window that looked out into the black sky. Distant stars blinked faintly, cold and uncaring. She thought about the report's broken signals, drifting engines, the faint heartbeat of a dying fleet. A memory rose in her mind, stories from old records, when Earth itself had been treated as an outcast. The galaxy had tried to crush humanity, yet Earth had endured. Perhaps those ships out there knew the same pain. "Commander!" A voice called from behind. It was Captain Rahul, a steady officer with a scar across his cheek. "The fleet is prepared. Are you sure you want to lead this mission yourself?" Myra turned, her face calm. "If these ships truly are refugees, then I need to be there. I want to see their faces, not just their signals." Rahul gave a short nod. "Then we go together." Meanwhile, on Earth below, news of the mysterious fleet leaked through channels. Citizens gathered around screens, whispering with fear and curiosity. Children asked their parents if aliens were coming again. Some feared invasion, others felt excitement at the chance of meeting new life. Earth's people had seen much, but the unknown always stirred their hearts. Back in the void, the human fleet prepared to depart. Sleek gray ships moved from their stations, their engines glowing bright. They were not as large as the massive war fleets of the empires, but every vessel was built with care and strength. Humanity had fewer ships, but each one carried the spirit of survival and the lessons of hard history. Myra stood on the command deck of her ship, the Horizon. Her crew worked around her, checking shields, testing engines, and running scans. The screen ahead showed a faint cluster of dots, the refugee ships moving slowly toward them. "They will see us soon," Rahul said quietly beside her. Myra nodded. "Let them see. And let them know we are not afraid." For the exiles, the moment was terrifying. From their broken windows, they saw new lights rising against the black, sharp, disciplined, and powerful. Human ships. To them, these were the vessels of the race their empire had taught them to fear. The Council of Exiles panicked. Some shouted to flee, others whispered that this was the end. But Commander Talon stood firm. "Hold our course. Do not raise weapons. If the humans fire, then at least we fall with honor." Rin, standing near him, felt his heart hammering. He had heard stories of Earth since he was a child, stories of warriors who never bowed, of a planet that had turned back armadas. Now those stories had become real, ships glowing in the dark. Between the two groups, silence stretched. The humans approached with engines steady, shields ready. The exiles waited, powerless but unbroken. And in that silence, the first step toward a meeting was about to begin. The Horizon glided forward, its hull catching the faint glow of distant stars. On its command deck, Commander Myra stood still, her eyes locked on the cluster of weak signals ahead. The exiles' ships looked fragile, drifting like tired birds with broken wings. Their lights flickered, their movements uneven. Myra had seen wreckage before, but this was different. These were not ruins of war. These were survivors. "Range closing," Rahul reported, his voice steady. "We are in communication distance." "Open a channel," Myra ordered. Her crew worked quickly. Static filled the speakers at first, a harsh sound that echoed across the deck. Then, through the noise, came a weak and trembling voice. It spoke in a broken tongue, words twisted by damaged systems but still carrying meaning. "This is, Fleet of the Forsaken, we seek mercy, we seek a place to live." The crew exchanged looks. Many had expected a trick or threats, not a plea. Myra's eyes softened. She leaned forward. This is Commander Myra of Earth. We hear you. Who speaks for you? Silence followed, as if the exiles feared to answer. Finally, another voice, stronger but weary, came through. I am Commander Talon. We are no longer welcome in the Empire. No world opens its gates to us. Our people are starving. If you drive us away, we have nowhere else to go. The deck of the Horizon grew quiet. Rahul whispered, they sound desperate. Myra gave a slow nod. She pressed the comm again. We understand. But you must know that Earth has enemies. If you seek deception, if you bring danger to us, we will not forgive it. Talon's reply came quickly, with no hesitation. We have no strength left for war. If you doubt us, send your eyes aboard our ships. You will see the truth. Myra studied the screen. His words rang clear, and her instincts told her he spoke honestly. She turned to Rahul. Prepare a shuttle. I will meet them myself. Rahul frowned. It is risky. What if they hide weapons? What if it is a trap? Myra's gaze did not waver. Then I will see with my own eyes. And if it is not, then someone must show them that Earth is not blind to suffering. Minutes later, the shuttle detached from the horizon, its engines humming softly as it drifted toward the exile fleet. Inside, Myra sat with a small team of officers. Her hands rested calmly on her knees, but her eyes stayed sharp. She knew every move might decide the fate of both sides. On the exile flagship, the crew gathered in silence as the human shuttle approached. Children pressed their faces to cracked windows, watching the sleek craft glow against the black. Elders whispered prayers. Ren stood near Commander Talon, his chest tight with fear. They are coming here, he whispered. Humans. Real humans. Talon's face was carved with determination. Stand tall. Do not show fear. If they came to kill us, we would already be dead. This is something else. The shuttle docked with a shudder. The airlock hissed open, and for the first time, humans and exiles stood face to face. Myra stepped through, her figure straight, her uniform clean but without grandeur. She carried no weapon in her hands. Behind her, two officers followed, alert but calm. The exiles stared. To them, the humans looked strange yet strong. Myra's eyes met Talon's, and in that instant, no words were spoken, but a quiet recognition passed between them, two commanders carrying the weight of their people. I am Myra, she said simply. Her voice was calm but firm. You asked for mercy. Show me your truth. Talon bowed his head slightly, not in weakness but in respect. Then walk with me. He led her through the corridors of the ship. The walls were scarred, patched with scraps of metal. The lights flickered weakly. They passed rows of families huddled together, eyes hollow from hunger. Children clung to their mothers, watching the strangers with silent fear. Myra's steps slowed as she looked around. She saw not soldiers but survivors. Rin, walking beside them, whispered, Do you believe us now? Myra glanced at him, and for the first time, her stern face softened. Yes. I believe you. When they reached the central chamber, Talon spoke again. We are outcasts. The Empire called us traitors and drove us into the void. Every world we begged for help turned us away. I do not ask for comfort, only for a chance to live. Give us soil to stand on, and we will work. Give us water to drink, and we will grow. If you send us away, then you condemn us to death. Myra studied him closely. His voice was steady, but his eyes carried the weight of years of pain. She could feel the eyes of hundreds upon her, waiting for her next words. Finally, she spoke. Earth remembers what it feels like to be cast aside. Long ago, the galaxy left us to die, but we endured. I cannot promise what my council will decide. But I will speak for you. And I will fight for you, if you are honest in your need. The chamber filled with quiet gasps. Some of the exiles lowered their heads, tears filling their eyes. For the first time in years, hope stirred among them. Talon placed a hand on his chest. Then you will not only have our gratitude, Commander Myra. You will have our loyalty. Whatever comes, we will not forget this day. Ren's voice trembled with wonder as he looked at Myra. You came when no one else would. Myra met his gaze. Sometimes the Forsaken find strength in each other. As the shuttle returned to the horizon, Myra carried with her the faces of the broken but unbroken. And deep inside, she knew Earth's path had changed. These people had been cast out by the stars, but perhaps their true home was waiting here, beside humanity. The Horizon's crew watched as the shuttle returned from the exile flagship. The docking clamps locked into place, and Commander Myra stepped out with her officers. Her uniform was the same, her stride still steady, but there was something new in her eyes, a weight she now carried for two peoples instead of one. On the command deck, Raoul approached her quickly. What did you see? Myra removed her gloves and set them on the console. I saw families. Children. People holding on to life with nothing but scraps. They are not an enemy fleet. They are survivors. The words spread across the crew like ripples in water. Some nodded quietly, feeling the truth in her voice. Others frowned with unease. A young officer asked the question that hung in the air. Commander, how can we be sure it is not a trap? Desperation can be used as a weapon too. Myra met his gaze calmly. I looked into their eyes. I do not see deceit there. But doubt is natural. We will let the council decide. Until then, we keep our guard up but not our hearts closed. Back on Earth, the council chamber filled again with voices. The signal from Myra's inspection had been broadcast live, showing the exile ship's broken corridors and weak people. Some leaders leaned forward with sympathy. Others crossed their arms, distrust heavy on their faces. A council member with sharp features spoke firmly. We cannot allow them to settle near Earth. If their empire comes looking, it will bring danger straight to our doorstep. Another replied, softer in tone. And if we turn them away, we leave them to die. What does it say about Earth if we become like the empires who cast them out? The room divided quickly, voices rising on both sides. Humanity had always stood alone, guarding its independence. Opening the door to strangers meant opening the door to unknown risks. Yet leaving the exiles adrift meant turning away from people who had already suffered enough. Myra stood before them when her turn came to speak. Her voice did not rise, but it carried across the chamber with steady strength. I walked their halls. I saw their children clutching scraps of food, their elders wrapped in rags for warmth. I know danger when I see it, and I tell you this: these people are not danger. They are broken, but not lost. If Earth does not give them a chance, no one else will. The chamber fell into silence. The leaders exchanged looks, weighing fear against duty. Finally, the council head spoke. We will allow them temporary shelter, but only under strict watch. If they show any sign of deceit, they will be removed from our space. It was not full welcome, but it was hope. Myra bowed her head slightly. That is all I ask. Let them live. News spread across Earth. Some people rejoiced, proud that humanity had shown mercy. Others protested, worried that strangers would bring danger. In cities, debates filled the airwaves. In quiet homes, families whispered about what it meant to be human. Meanwhile, the exile fleet followed the horizon deeper into the solar system. Their broken ships moved carefully, engines straining. From their windows, they saw the bright glow of Earth for the first time, a blue and green jewel turning slowly in the black. Gasps filled the decks. For many, it was the most beautiful sight they had ever seen. On the flagship, Ren pressed his hands against the glass, eyes wide. So this is the world the Empire feared. His voice carried awe. It does not look like a world of war. It looks alive. Commander Talon stood beside him. His face was stern, but inside his chest, a quiet relief stirred. Alive, yes. And perhaps it will give us life again. Yet not all on the exile ships felt peace. Some whispered doubts. The humans will use us. They will watch us like prisoners. Others feared the Empire's wrath if their location became known. The wound of betrayal ran deep, and trust did not come easily. When the fleet neared orbit, one of the exile ships, too damaged to hold course, drifted dangerously close to Earth's satellites. Alarms rang across both sides. Human defense systems locked on, preparing to fire if the ship came too near. Panic spread among the exiles, who shouted that it was only failing engines. On the horizon, Rahul looked at Myra. If our systems read it as a threat, the defense grid will fire automatically. Myra slammed her hand on the console. Override it. Send assistance now. Within minutes, human patrol craft rushed forward, attaching tow cables to the damaged ship. With careful effort, they pulled it back into safe orbit. On the exile vessel, cheers erupted, relief flooding through weary hearts. For the first time, they saw humans not as guards but as rescuers. Later, when quiet returned, Talon sent a message to Myra. His voice was rough but filled with gratitude. You did not let us fall. For that, we will remember. Myra's reply was simple. You are not alone anymore. That night, under Earth's sky, both humans and exiles lay awake in their ships. Suspicion still lingered, but hope had begun to grow. They were strangers, yet the line between them was thinner now than before. And in that fragile bond, the seeds of trust were planted. The exile fleet floated in low orbit, their ships circling slowly around Earth. From their windows, the aliens gazed down at the planet's blue oceans and wide green lands. For many, it was the first time they had seen such beauty without fear of attack. Hope stirred in tired hearts, though shadows of doubt still lingered. On the ground, preparations had begun. Earth's council had granted the exiles a barren stretch of land far from the great cities. The region was dry and empty, a place where no one lived, but it offered soil, space, and air. It would not be comfort, but it would be safety. Commander Myra stood on the landing field as the first exile shuttle touched the surface. Dust rose as the old craft shook and settled. Its hatch creaked open, and the first refugees stepped onto Earth. They moved slowly, their eyes wide, their skin pale from years spent under cold lights. Ren was among them. He paused at the edge of the ramp, looking at the vast sky above. The sun burned brighter than he had imagined, and the air filled his lungs with warmth he had never known. He whispered softly, "So this is life beneath a real sky." Myra approached, offering a steady hand. Ren looked at her with both awe and hesitation before finally taking the gesture. His fingers trembled, but Myra's grip was firm and kind. "Welcome to Earth," she said simply. Day by day, more shuttles landed, carrying families and supplies. Human soldiers guided them to their new settlement, not with weapons raised but with calm order. The exiles built tents, shelters, and crude homes. At first, everything seemed strange. The air felt heavy, the ground rough beneath their feet. Yet as time passed, the barren land began to change. Human engineers brought tools and machines. Together with the exiles, they dug wells and laid irrigation lines. Earth's farmers showed them how to plant crops in the dry soil, how to turn emptiness into green. For the exiles, it was the first lesson in belonging. Ren worked side by side with young human workers. At first, they spoke little, the gap between their languages wide. But gestures and smiles built bridges faster than words. One day, a human boy offered him a small fruit, red and shining. Ren bit into it carefully, and his eyes widened at the sweet taste. The boy laughed, clapping his hands. It was a small moment, yet powerful, for it showed that trust could grow even in silence. Commander Talon, though still cautious, walked through the settlement often. He watched his people work with new energy, watched children play in dust that would soon become gardens. Once, he paused to see a group of exile children and human children chasing each other in laughter. For the first time in many years, his stern face softened. "Perhaps we were not forsaken," he murmured. Still, challenges remained. Some humans in nearby towns protested, fearing the newcomers. "Why should we feed them when our own need care?" they asked. Others whispered that the exiles might betray Earth when their strength returned. Tension grew, and Earth's council kept guards posted around the settlement. The exiles too carried fears. At night, whispers spread in their tents. What if this kindness is only for a time? What if the humans grow tired of us? What if the Empire finds us here? Their wounds of rejection had not healed fully, and suspicion was slow to fade. One evening, Myra visited the settlement. She sat with Talon near a small fire, the stars shining above. "Your people still fear us," she said gently. Talon's gaze was fixed on the fire. "Fear does not vanish quickly. We have known betrayal too long. But they are learning. And so are we." He looked at her at last. "Your people also fear us. Yet here we sit, not as enemies." Myra nodded. Change begins with simple things. A shared meal. A child's laughter. A seed in the soil. Those are stronger than any weapon. Days turned into weeks. The barren land grew different. Green shoots rose where once only dust lay. Wells filled with clean water. The exiles began to stand straighter, their steps stronger. They were not just surviving now, they were living. Ren spent his days working in the fields. Every time he placed a seed in the soil, he felt as though he was planting a part of himself. One afternoon, as he watched the small green leaves pushing upward, he whispered, "We are not drifting anymore. We are growing." News spread across the galaxy. Rumors reached distant stations that Earth had welcomed the Forsaken. Some mocked the humans as foolish, others whispered with fear, but many watched with quiet respect. The act of mercy had shaken the old balance of power. For the exiles, Earth had become more than a refuge. It was the beginning of home. And for humanity, the decision to open its arms had marked a turning point in history. Two peoples, both once cast aside, were building something new together. But peace was never safe for long. Beyond the stars, eyes had turned toward Earth, watching with anger and suspicion. The Empire had not forgotten its exiles, and whispers of coming storms began to stir. The fields of the settlement grew greener with each passing week. Children laughed under the bright sun, families worked together, and the barren land began to look alive. Yet even in this growing peace, unease stirred. In the quiet nights, some exiles lifted their eyes to the stars and wondered when the Empire would notice their absence. That answer came sooner than expected. High above Earth, an old human listening post detected strange signals. The readings were sharp, cold, and organized. It was the mark of warships. The message spread quickly, and within hours Earth's council gathered in haste. Commander Myra was called at once. "They have found us," the council leader said grimly. "The Empire is moving near our system." Myra's face hardened. She thought of the settlement, of the exiles planting seeds, of children playing together. They had only begun to taste hope, and now danger threatened to burn it away. News reached the settlement. Commander Talon stood before his people, his voice heavy but steady. "The Empire comes. They will not forgive us for fleeing, nor for surviving. But we are not the same as we once were. We are no longer only wanderers in the dark. Here, with Earth, we stand together." The exiles listened in silence. Fear rippled among them, yet something else moved in their hearts to resolve. They had been chased for too long, but this time, they had a home worth defending. Rin, who had worked each day in the fields, clenched his fists. He remembered the first fruit he had tasted, the first laugh he had shared with a human friend. This world had given him something his own empire never had: kindness. He whispered to himself, "I will not run again." Preparations began at once. Human engineers met with exile mechanics. The old ships of the exiles were repaired, their engines strengthened with human tools. Earth's defense fleet, though smaller than the Empire's, trained beside them. For the first time, humans and exiles built a united guard. Still, doubt pressed hard. "We cannot match the Empire's numbers," one human officer warned. "If they bring their full strength, Earth will be at risk." Myra shook her head. "Strength is not only in numbers. It is in courage. And courage we have." Talon agreed. "The Empire expects us to bow. They do not expect us to resist. That is our chance." The settlement became a hive of effort. Fields were left half-tended as young and old worked to help in whatever way they could. Some built barricades. Others carried supplies to the docks where ships waited. Even the children joined, carrying water or food to the weary workers. At night, the fires in the settlement glowed brighter, as if to push back the shadow drawing closer. Stories were told of lost battles, of broken journeys, but also of survival. Hope grew stronger than fear. Then, the day came. From the edge of the system, the Empire's fleet arrived. Their ships were vast, sharp, and cold, like blades cutting through the void. The sight of them filled even the bravest hearts with dread. In Earth's orbit, human and exile ships waited. They were fewer, smaller, and worn, yet their lights burned steady. On the command deck of her ship, Myra gave the order. "Hold the line. For Earth. For our new friends." In his own vessel, Talon spoke to his crew. "We have no empire now. We have no throne. But we have something greater: freedom. Fight for it." The two forces faced each other in silence, the stars around them cold witnesses. Then, the Empire sent a message across the void. Return the traitors. Surrender the exiles. Earth will be spared. Myra answered with calm steel. Earth does not betray its guests. If you want them, you will have to take them from us. The reply was simple and sharp. Then you will burn with them. The battle began. Flashes of light burst across the black sky. Empire ships fired their heavy cannons, tearing through the void. Human and exile ships answered, striking with speed and precision. The clash of metal and fire shook the heavens. Rin, though not a soldier, had joined as a helper on a supply craft. He carried energy cells to fighters and patched systems in the heat of battle. Fear pounded in his chest, yet each time he thought of the fields he had planted, he found strength. The Empire pressed hard, their numbers overwhelming. Several human ships were hit, burning as they fell into the atmosphere. Yet still the line held. The exiles fought with fury, for they had nothing left to lose. Humans fought with equal fire, for they refused to surrender their honor. On Earth's surface, the settlement watched the sky. Children clung to their parents, elders prayed, but none fled. They had planted their roots, and they would not leave them. Hours passed, and the battle raged. The Empire began to bend the defenders back, their massive ships pushing forward. But Earth and the exiles still held. In that moment, Myra gave a bold order. She directed her fleet into a dangerous formation, drawing the Empire into a narrow field between Earth's moons. Talon understood at once and joined her lead. Trapped in the tight space, the Empire's larger ships lost their advantage. Now, smaller human and exile crafts darted through the gaps, striking from every side. For the first time, the Empire faltered. The tide had not turned fully, but the chance had come. The defenders fought harder, knowing the future of their world rested on this battle. And though victory was not yet certain, one truth burned in every heart: Earth would not surrender, and the exiles would not be taken. The stars above Earth burned bright, but brighter still were the flashes of battle. The Empire's fleet pressed forward, its great ships roaring with fire. Yet Earth and the exiles refused to break. Their smaller craft struck again and again, swift as sparks in the night. Myra stood firm on her command deck, her eyes sharp though her body was weary. Every strike shook her ship, but her voice never wavered. Stay close, stay fast. Do not give them the sky. On another vessel, Commander Talon's voice rang with equal strength. Aim for their joints, not their armor. Break their pride piece by piece. Together, human and exile voices filled the comms, a chorus of defiance. They were fewer, they were weaker, yet they fought as one. The Empire tried to crush them with sheer force. Massive beams lanced through the dark, ripping holes in the void. One human frigate was torn apart, vanishing in fire. An exile cruiser spun out of control, its engines gone. Still the line held. Rin's supply ship raced among the fighters. His hands shook as he patched wires, passed energy cells, and steadied pilots wounded in the fight. He had never seen such terror, yet he had never felt such purpose. This was no longer only about survival. It was about a home, a future, and the promise that no one would be cast aside again. Hours dragged on like years. Both sides bled, yet neither yielded. But slowly, the Empire began to stumble. The trap between the moons was working. Their heavy ships struggled in the narrow field. Their size, once their strength, became their weakness. Myra seized the moment. All ships, push now. Drive them back. Talon echoed, strike their pride. Show them what freedom means. The fleet surged forward. Human fighters darted like arrows, exile ships flanking with sharp precision. Together they cut deep into the Empire's formation. A massive enemy cruiser, pride of the fleet, was pierced by combined fire and split apart in a thunderous bloom of light. The Empire faltered. Their commanders sent orders laced with anger, but fear had already begun to spread through their ranks. These were supposed to be traitors and primitives, easy prey. Instead, they had found lions. One by one, Empire ships began to retreat, turning their bows away from Earth. Their signals grew frantic. What had started as an easy hunt had become a bitter wound. Rin watched from his supply ship as the enemy lights faded into the dark. His chest swelled with emotion. He whispered, "We did not run. We did not fall." When the last of the Empire's fleet vanished into the stars, silence fell over the defenders. Ships hung in space, battered but alive. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then voices broke through, first a whisper, then a roar, cheers of victory. On Earth's surface, the settlement cried out in joy. Children ran through the fields, families embraced, and tears fell freely. The sky had not burned them. Instead, it had crowned them with triumph. Myra returned to Earth and stood before both humans and exiles. Her voice carried through the settlement square, where thousands had gathered. Today we proved that mercy is not weakness. We proved that a small world, joined with those who were cast out, could stand against the Empire. We are not only survivors. We are a people who choose to defend, not destroy. Talon stepped forward beside her. We have been without a home for many years. Our empire called us traitors. Other worlds shut their doors to us. But Earth welcomed us. And now, together, we have carved a place the empire cannot take away. We are no longer exiles. We are family. The crowd erupted, voices rising like a storm of joy. For the first time in generations, the exiles felt not like shadows in the dark, but like roots planted deep in living soil. Later, Rin sat in the quiet fields, the stars shining above. His hands were sore, his clothes torn, yet his heart was full. He thought of the battle, of Myra's calm command, of Talon's fierce words, of the children laughing even when the sky had burned. He whispered to himself, "We were cast out by the stars, but Earth gave us a home. That is something no empire can take." Myra joined him, her gaze fixed on the horizon where the first light of dawn began to rise. She spoke softly, yet with strength. "The stars may never understand us, Rin. But that is their choice. We do not need their approval. What we have is here." Rin nodded, his eyes shining. "Here is enough. More than enough." The dawn spread across the fields, painting the land in gold. The exiles had come to Earth with nothing but broken ships and weary hearts. Now they had land, laughter, and a future. Humanity had once been feared and mistrusted, but now it had given a gift greater than any empire could imagine. A place to belong. And in the heart of the galaxy, whispers began to spread. Whispers of Earth, the world that had stood against an empire. Whispers of humans, who had turned strangers into family. Whispers of a truth the stars could no longer deny. Humanity's answer was clear. They were not conquerors. They were not prey. They were a people who remembered what it meant to be cast out and who chose, against all odds, to welcome others home.